On the Blockbusters show, we've talked about plenty of terrible Christmas specials in movies, like The Christmas Tree and Rhapsody Street Kids and The Christmas Light, Christmas Brigade, even that terrible 50s Mexican Santa Claus movie where he fights the devil and Merlin is in it. We've talked about a lot of terrible ones, but I feel comfortable in saying this is probably the worst one. From what I can tell, this was written by some children's book author who also went on to be the narrator for the thing. And it's directed by a guy who directed this terrible 70s kids movie.
Ice Cream Bunny, of course. Of course.
And it's well known, I guess, for being a terrible movie from the 70s with its really shitty production quality. And I think there's like long stretches of the movie where they're just showing off this local theme park because I guess they funded it, or maybe it was meant to be shown there or something. The movie just pauses in the middle so they can do reenactments of public domain fairy tales like Thumbelina and Jack and the Beanstalk. That movie was directed by the same guy that directed this. And the narrator of that movie is the same person who wrote it, and lo and behold, it's the same deal here. That same woman is the narrator for this movie. And I gotta say, after finding that out, that this movie was made by the same people that made Santa Claus Meets the Ice Cream Bunny, everything clicked into place. I was like, that explains why this movie is so terrible. But you know what though? That movie has one thing that this movie doesn't have, and that's motion. This is a movie, a 70-minute film that's mostly comprised of still images. It's like watching a slideshow with narration done by some lady and a couple of voice actors that are probably just people that they were friends with or people they knew. That's the entire movie. It's that for 70 minutes.
Look at you, Calvin. You got chalk all over your face. Well, wipe it off.
So think of this as kind of like an inverse of something like Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, where that was pretty much the same deal. It was just still images, but it was a video game, and it was trying to be this like super wacky, outrageous, sexy, erotic, softcore porn comedy rom-com or whatever. This movie is trying to do the opposite of that, where it's trying to be a wholesome family romp for the holiday season. But I gotta say, this is somehow worse than Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, because whereas Plumbers Don't Wear Ties is fucking terrible, at least the story around it was interesting. This movie doesn't even have that going for it. Why the fuck do I have a copy of Plumbers Don't Wear Ties on Nintendo Switch? So as for the story of Santa's Christmas elf named Calvin, it's very basic stuff. You have this one elf who is an outcast. He's a misfit because apparently he makes toys that are so shitty they probably wouldn't even land a spot in the island of misfit toys.
He made a doll with bright red hair and dressed her in a calico gown with rings on her fingers and bows in her hair, but her legs were upside down. But
apparently Calvin is also a bit of a trickster because he pulls a prank on Santa Claus where he messes with his alarm clock and Santa has to rapidly try to get dressed so that way he doesn't miss his job.
Noticing the hourglass, Santa jumped to his feet as Santa rushed to find his suit. He looked funny, hurrying toward the closet, for Santa wore only one boot.
So right off the bat, I'm thinking, we're supposed to like this character then? Not only is he a screw-up, which, okay, yeah, you can have lovable screw-up characters, that's not impossible, but having a character who's not only a screw-up, but also an asshole, who's messing with his boss, who works one day out of the whole year, it's like, wow, Calvin is one of those idiots that apparently people just feel so sorry for. That's why they haven't gotten rid of him sooner. But apparently at the North Pole, they get so sick of Calvin's shit, eventually they demote him from working on the toy line to working with the reindeer. And I guess he has a better time there. The reindeer, I guess, like him.
They loved all of the elves dearly, but Calvin was their favorite one.
The only other thing I was thinking of in this whole opening sequence was I couldn't pinpoint the boss elf's accent. It sounds like it was a mix of like German and Swedish and just overall nondescript European accent.
Every few minutes it's something else. Ridiculous dolls, torn teddy bears, unusable wagons, and look at that bow and arrow. Useless!
The plot gets going, I guess, when Calvin is working on the Santa's sleigh with the reindeer, and he ends up falling into the sack of toys. So when Santa goes around doing his deliveries, Calvin ends up falling out, and he's found by this little girl, and that's when the whimsical story starts to take over.
But Calvin knew his secret must be kept, and a doll he must pretend to be. The children first stared at Calvin, then began laughing and making fun.
Or at least I think it's supposed to be whimsical, because the entire time I was watching this movie, I was bored out of my fucking mind. It also doesn't help that with this entire movie, I guess they were trying to do their own version of a Rankin Bass special, where, you know, those were stop motion and they worked with little miniature puppets and dolls. The massive difference, though, is that Rankin Bass specials are charming, and there's a reason why we still watch them even to this day. This is so fucking dirt cheap that they have to rely on these crappy still images, and they have some of the, like, just weirdest and or ugliest looking puppets throughout this whole fucking thing. Like, Calvin himself looks like, he looks like, you know how back in the day when they were, like, first making dolls based on Mario, and they don't really look anything like the Mario that we have now, so all those old Mario dolls look really weird and ugly in retrospect. He kind of looks like if they did that with Link. He looks like a really ugly doll version of Link from Legend of Zelda.
He was sewing one of its blue stuffed legs.
And to add to that, every once in a while they have different faces to try and show the characters have different emotions. And every time they do, they have some of the ugliest fucking faces on these characters. Like whenever Calvin is supposed to be shocked, it just looks really weird for some reason, because it's such a drastic contrast from his just normal, everyday, happy, smiling face.
Stop! Stop! I didn't want you to go! Go back! I don't know how to drive this sleigh!
And it also doesn't help that Calvin's voice is irritating. I mean, the voice acting in this thing is not very good to begin with. I mean, most of the voices seem to be coming from like the same 2 or 3 people, like it's a Dingo Pictures movie or something. But Calvin's voice in particular, I couldn't tell who did the voices for this. I didn't look that deep into it, but it sounded like either a woman trying to do a little boy voice or a grown man trying to do a whimsical, childlike, Pee Wee Herman, SpongeBob kind of voice. But anyway, once Calvin ends up landing in the arms of this little girl, she thinks that he was her Christmas present, and so they form this special bond, and it would be charming if the entire movie didn't look like Polaroids you find in the basement of a serial killer. It's especially alarming when they introduce the whole notion that, oh, like actual live action people are in the story as well. It's really distracting when every so often they show images of the little girl, and some of them just, like I said, they're just so weird and creepy. They look like Polaroids taken by a creep. Like, there are several images where the little girl looks like she doesn't even know she's having her picture taken.
Kim slept soundly as dawn drew near. The night was slipping away. Little did she know she'd be the only child in the world to receive an elf on Christmas Day.
So the little girl, Kim, befriends Calvin, and it seems like she doesn't have a lot of friends, but there's this extended sequence where they have a tea party, and Calvin is playing with her and her teddy bear.
Kim quickly returned to her bedroom, carrying lots of food on a plate. They sat at a little round table as Calvin ate and ate.
There's also a mother character in there who much like the little girl, looks like she has no idea that they took pictures of her throughout this thing. There are several times where she's not looking at the camera, and other times it looks like they caught her completely off guard.
Where did Kim get that, Mother?
I don't really know. I guess Santa Claus did bring it.
But more importantly, she really doesn't do a whole lot in the movie. I mean, even if they did the super obvious cliche of, oh, she doesn't really know that Calvin's alive and she just assumes that he's a toy. And then at the end of the movie, she ends up realizing that he's alive and that he's real. Even if they did something like that, it wouldn't have been any less cliche than the other bullshit that's in this movie.
Calvin? Who's Calvin?
That's my elf that Santa gave me for Christmas. And you know something, Mother? He's alive.
Really, Kim. Sometimes your imagination goes too far.
For example, there's a whole thing where Kim is getting picked on by the local bullies, and they make fun of her for having an elf as a friend, and they say that, oh, your doll is ugly.
They'd never seen a doll so ugly, and were glad they hadn't received one.
Which is saying something, because honestly, I think a little bit of everything in this movie is ugly, but that's just me. There's a scene that feels like it goes on for 2 weeks. It's so fucking dragged out and long, where they take Calvin and they put him onto this toy airplane of theirs, and he's supposed to be flying through the air, but again, there's no motion, so we don't really get any impact with any of this, and it just goes on for so long, and the voice actor is just doing this like, whoa, oh jeez, I'm so high in the air, oh no, oh.
Oh, look at everything upside down. This makes me feel sick.
In a way, I was hoping this would end like a Mr. Bill short where it ended with Calvin getting horribly injured. But no, this movie was not as merciful. Back at the North Pole, they end up finding out that Calvin is lost and the elves start to feel bad, even though the entire first half of the movie was just them shit-talking him and how much of a screw-up he was and how much of a good-for-nothing he was. But now all of a sudden that he's gone, I guess they realized they were being petty and wrong for saying those things.
Poor little Calvin. He must be miserable. We'll have to make a plan to get him back.
So Santa has to go back and look for him, and they travel throughout the U.S., and there's this just such stupid shit in this movie.
Hello, Mr. President? This is Mr. Santa Claus. I have a very special favor to ask of you. I must get a new visa to visit the United States.
It's not a super long sequence, but the fact that it's even there, it's like, why even bother with that? Why is that in this movie? Just have Santa go looking for his elf. And, I mean, they try to do the thing where, oh, Santa's interacting with people in public, so not to get recognized, he has to dress up in a trench coat and a fedora and sunglasses.
Santa finally had reached the large city as a door-to-door search began. He discovered some people to be unfriendly. After all, he was a strange-looking man.
And I guess people back in the 70s didn't realize that makes you look even shadier, but okay, yeah. And this goes on for a long fucking time throughout the second half of this thing, of Santa looking for Calvin, and people occasionally going, hey, don't I recognize you? Oh, I certainly hope not.
Slowly, Santa turned and walked away. There was nothing he could say or do. Even if he told the policeman who he was, he'd never believe it was true.
And if it's not that, they're describing things happening because they only have a couple of fucking still shots to work with where it's like, oh, Santa then got onto a bus, and they show a still image of a like papier-mâché bus or something.
Santa rode a bus to the north of town. Another search he was ready to try. He wondered if people questioned his raincoat when there wasn't a cloud in the sky.
It is kind of funny watching this movie in the day and age where audiobooks are a really big thing, but you know what? Audiobooks probably would have been better because it's like, it would have been shorter, probably. I really hope to God they didn't try to turn this into a fucking novel because I guarantee the novel would have been as played out as the movie. But the entire time I was watching this movie, it really did feel like watching one of those old video picture book things that they used to have on DVDs for old kids movies when I was growing up, where it's like you could basically watch the movie with still images from the movie and a narrator who basically describes the whole plot of the movie in like 7 minutes. But unfortunately, this isn't that. This isn't 7 minutes. This is fucking 70 minutes long, and it feels it. Santa ends up finding Calvin, and they do it in the dumbest way possible too, where Santa goes door to door and ultimately finds the right house where Kim is at, and his excuse is, oh, we're looking for toys to hand out next year.
Kim heard her mother talking to Santa, the stranger Calvin mentioned before.
We're collecting toys for next year. I'm sure with all the nice new things your children receive this Christmas, they won't mind giving up a few of their old and broken playthings. They're getting to be so many children that we have to start early. It takes a while to get them fixed and painted, you know.
I guess you're right. I'll see what the other children have. I'm sure we can find something for you.
And the mom doesn't even question it. She doesn't question why this obvious puppet man who's dressed like a fucking flasher is going around asking for toys. Kim has to give up Calvin. They say their goodbyes. It's supposed to be heartfelt, but I honestly felt nothing.
Kim looked at Santa and then at her doll. The North Pole was where Calvin belonged. Hesitantly, she extended him to Santa. Thanking her, he waved and was gone.
Then there's this extended sequence where they have to go through baggage claim at an airport, and again, the people working at the airport are like, hey, that doll looks kind of suspicious. It looks like it might be moving. It's probably just a really advanced toy or something.
At the airport, Calvin pretended to be a doll. The customs agent wondered what he should do. There was something strange about that toy, but he nodded and let it pass through.
And like I said earlier with the scene where Santa has to go to the president, it's like, why is that in this movie? Like, it feels like they didn't have the basics to make even the most generic Christmas special. It's like, just have Santa go looking for his elf. You can do shenanigans where he's on the streets and people are like, oh, is that the real Santa Claus or is that just a guy in a costume? It still would have sucked because it really feels like you're just looking at shitty slideshows. It would have been cliche and stupid and it still wouldn't have mattered because it would have been stupid slideshow presentation style, but it would have been better than just simply doing all this convoluted shit of Santa having to put on disguises and all that, and the stuff with the president. That was fucking stupid. And then the movie ends with them making it back to the North Pole. All the elves are happy to see Calvin.
The elves were thrilled with Calvin's return. Joyfully, they jumped up and down. That is, all of the elves except Heilig. Calvin truly wanted to be Heilig's friend and prove he could make perfect toys. As Heilig listened, he knew Calvin was sincere. He'd learned a lot from the girls and boys.
And then, so Kim doesn't forget about Calvin, he ends up making a doll replica of himself and giving it to her. So that way, she never really loses Calvin.
Calvin had received Santa's message and began making a special toy. He knew the gift would be perfect, and Kim would be delighted with joy.
And as the movie finally and mercifully ended,
Be good little girls and boys. A Merry Christmas, everyone.
I then started constructing this alternate ending in my head where it turned out that Calvin grew up to basically become Leafy. So this stupid-looking knockoff Link from Zelda puppet eventually left the North Pole and went on to become a miserable YouTuber who makes videos where he basically makes fun of children and then calls it satire and then gets into beefs with other YouTubers and, eventually had his career ended by Content Cop and then, had to move on to other shittier websites for internet relevance. That honestly would have made a way more interesting movie than this dumbass piece of shit. I am not even exaggerating when I say this is probably the worst Christmas special or Christmas movie we've talked about for Blockbusters. I can't think of any other movie I hated more than this. I mean, this was just the most boring, cheapest thing. I mean, like, even if you take the production value away, they didn't have a lot to work with, they had to use still images, and the whole thing just feels like a 70-minute slideshow. Even taking that out, this movie is fucking boring. It just feels like these pointless detours where it's like, why is that here? Why are we having Santa stop by the president to make sure that he's legally allowed in the US to go looking for this elf he lost? All this stuff of Santa running around in the streets in a trench coat and fedora so that people don't recognize that he's Santa Claus. The stuff at the end when they're at the airport and the people working at the airport are wondering if Calvin is really a toy or if he's really alive. And even when it's not stupid, pointless shit like that, When you get to the part of the movie that feels more like a traditional kids movie, like, oh, the lonely little girl who befriends this mystical creature, and, you know, she gets picked on by bullies, but then, you know, she ends up sticking it to them and showing them in the end, you know, and the true spirit of Christmas, and, you know, being there for the ones you love, and friendship is magic and all that. None of it mattered, because the entire time I was just so ready for it to be over. The first 5 minutes felt like 20. It's that boring. That's just how dull this entire fucking movie is. When you compare it to stuff like Rhapsody Street Kids or Christmas Tree or Christmas Lights, Christmas Brigade, any of those, at least there was some kind of effort. I mean, even the crappy kind of rip-off movies like Fairy Tale Christmas or Legend of Cirilla, they weren't very good, but there was at least an effort to them, and they were shorter. At least Fairy Tale Christmas was. I remember that being like half an hour, 40 minutes maybe. It wasn't 70 minutes like this. And Legend of Cirilla, I just remember just being kind of bland and not that interesting, but it at least tried. There was more effort than anything in this. Even Plumbers Don't Wear Ties gets more credit, because at least it's interesting with the story around how it got made. This was just draining, honestly. I have no other words. I just can't. Otherwise, that does it for Blockbusters in 2025. Look forward to next year. We're going to be doing more movie reviews, more movie marathons. Every once in a while, try to do something a little bit different. I was thinking about maybe doing videos about comics, or maybe even music, maybe do album reviews. There's a couple of J-pop and K-pop albums I really want to talk about for videos at some point, but yeah, we'll cross all those bridges when we get to them. So anyways, guys, all I could say is have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I really hope the best for all of you, because 2025 has been a hell of a year, and I really just want everybody to try and make the best of it. Anyways, until next time, guys, I'm Am Sykes of the Blockbuster Show, and we will see you guys in the next video.